This whole month, we've been talking about perfectly imperfect. And today, perfectly imperfect and expansive experience. See, we're continuing this journey through a grand rising, which is our yearly theme. And this month, we focus on our beliefs about perfection. Actually, we're really bringing our attention to imperfection. And we all know that phrase, practice makes perfect, but here's the thing, it doesn't. So when the goal of the practice is perfection, then we're suffocating, cutting off from that life-giving that essence. So if the goal is not perfection, but to recognize the beauty and possibility available to us, then that's where we begin to create this expansive experience of life. I remember being in a workshop early on, years and years and years ago, and my goal was to get to the end, right? I was wanting to get to the end of whatever it is that we were doing. And then somebody said, well, it's about the journey. And I said, no, it's about getting to the end. And then they said, well, have you ever gone window shopping? It's like, oh, that's just about enjoying the moment. It's not about actually having to buy something. It's like, yes. So the practice part of it isn't about being perfect and then you get to be perfect and then you do it one time because that was the perfection of it. No, the practice is about learning and enjoying the journey all along the way. So this week, we're going to be celebrating the imperfections that come along with that practice because we don't always do it perfectly, do we? Well, I don't. I should say I don't always do it perfectly. So this week, we're celebrating the beauty of living the imperfect life. And by recognizing that inherent beauty and potential, we open ourselves up to the expansive experience of life. What have we just experienced it? What have we lived our life, as the song said? So in order to do that, we're going to look at the power of self-compassion, self-acceptance, and cultivating a sense of wholeness in the midst of life's challenges. So like the song said, what if I stopped tearing myself down for major redesign and just live my life? What if there was no fortress to defend and I just lived my life? What if I lightened up the load I carry so you won't read on my tombstone, got it all done, died anyway? This week focuses on embracing the beauty of imperfection. And along with that, living authentically. See, by letting go of this idea that we're not good enough or not yet, I haven't done enough to deserve that, or I have to, well, I'm waiting until something, then we free ourselves up from those self-imposed limitations, really, and open the door to the possibility. Well, infinite possibilities, but maybe I should say the infinite possibilities. And we do that through the self-compassion. Remember, we just went through Empathy Month. What about if we had empathy for ourselves, self-acceptance, and cultivate that sense of I'm enough, I'm whole, I'm complete and perfect just as I am. I know we've heard that said along lots and lots of times, complete, perfect, and whole. And so it's easy to see that sometimes for someone else, and sometimes it's not. But what about if we saw that for ourselves? What about if we said to ourselves, I am complete, perfect, and whole? What would that be like? So if we reframe our perspective and shift from that, I don't know about you, but I have a kind of a critical lens to one of gratitude and appreciation for this unique individualization that we are, that piece of the puzzle that if we're not that piece, it's missing that piece. So as we embrace this imperfection, we align ourselves with the truth of who we are, and that's when we can experience just the joy and fulfillment of living our lives. And that's what happens when we realize those imperfections are not obstacles, but they're stepping stones through towards our personal and spiritual growth. Now, I had a dream not so very long ago that something bad was happening. It was just right outside my front door. And the door was open and there was a danger lurking there. And then in my dream, a Dalmatian appeared. And I recognize this dog as Star, one of our favorite pets. And she crossed over the Rainbow Bridge more than 20 years ago. But in that moment, and when I saw her in the dream, I said, oh, this is a dream because I know that she was gone. So this couldn't be happening in the moment. It was nothing more than an appearance. And in that moment, in the dream, I was no longer frightened. And I think if I could apply that in my life, it's the same thing with the imperfections. They're not real, they're perfectly imperfect. And a way to look at this is to think about the flowers. See the flowers behind me? Now, not all of those are absolutely perfect petals. They're not all symmetrically shaped. They're not all exactly the perfect color. There's a little variation in there. But do they think that they're not good enough to blossom, to bloom? I don't think so. So that's how we need to look at our own lives, perfectly imperfect. And then we see that we're all one. We're all here on the planet. That bouquet of flowers, it's all one bouquet of flowers, right? It's all one piece of landscaping. And through this lens of oneness, we understand that all of existence is divine, encompassing everything. Okay, even that which we don't like. So that perfectionism tends to narrow our focus to only what we perceive as ideal. And it disregards the diversity of life expressions. I know for me, sometimes if I don't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. If I can't do it right, I'm not going to do it at all. And right is that idea I have in mind of how things should be. So that's what I was looking at when I was thinking about this topic. Wholeness. If we focus on wholeness, then it reminds us that oneness consists of all the pieces. And it doesn't make any difference if there are parts that don't meet our expectations. It's all perfect. Sometimes we get down the road and say, oh, that's why that happened, or that's what that's about. And when we honor and embrace the imperfection along the way, then we honor the multifaceted nature of the world around us. And perfectionism, well, it thrives on that idea of there's that which is perfect and that which is imperfect. And that's where we get into the self-judgment, fear, and lack of action. I remember a friend of mine, and this stuck in my head, comparison is the death of joy. Comparison is the death of joy. If I'm having a wonderful experience and then I see somebody else having what I feel is a more wonderful experience, then my experience somehow is diminished. Is it? This perspective leads to giving away power, which, well, then that power is outside of ourselves, and we need to take that back. Instead, we open ourselves to that self-compassion, to authenticity, and that richness of life's tapestry of imperfections. And is that simple? Is it easy? Not so much. So I had to take a moment and think about how perfectionism hindered my personal and spiritual growth. And maybe you could think about this too. How has that perfectionism, that limited idea, hindered your personal and spiritual growth? I have to think back about when I was probably in junior high and taking clarinet lessons. Well, I couldn't play when I first picked it up. You know what? I didn't practice. I didn't think I could play. I couldn't play, so I didn't practice. So I didn't continue. So I still can't play. What good did that do? So here's the story. There's two grains were lying side by side on fertile soil. The first grain said, I want to grow up. I want to put roots deep into the ground and sprout from the ground. I dream of blossoming in delicate buds and proclaiming the coming of spring. I want to feel the warm rays of sun and dewdrops on my petals. And this grain fulfilled its calling and grew up and became a beautiful flower. The second grain said, I'm afraid. If I put down my roots into the ground, I don't know what they'll face. If I grow tender stems, they can be damaged by the wind. If I grow flowers, they may be disrupted. So I'll wait for a safer time. Thus, the second grain waited until a chicken passing by pecked it up. See, perfectionism is a way of narrowing our focus and fixating on that limited ideal. And it creates the illusion that there's only one way to be, one way to look, one way to succeed. And so we have to look through the lens of oneness. We realize that all thing is divine, and we understand that even what we might consider imperfect is an essential part of the whole. So we have to embrace that imperfection as part of our journey and honor the divine wholeness. In The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes writes, the spirit has already ordained that nature should be perfect. It would be impossible for spirit to ordain anything else, since in order to be at all, it must be perfect in its nature. A perfect cause must produce a perfect effect. The normal functions of life are harmonious, but we interfere with these in our ignorance and thus bring discord into temporary being. It gives us a little bit different perspective on it, doesn't it? So when we understand, when we cultivate this self-acceptance and compassion and embrace the imperfections, then we can extend this same acceptance to others. And when we do that, then we create this whole environment of inclusivity, where everyone is valued and honored for their unique contribution to the whole. So remember, if we're thinking about perfection, then there is that illusion of duality. And the idea that there's a clear distinction between perfect and imperfect. So the truth is, there is no such thing as perfect or imperfect. Everything is in that realm of oneness. Just remember the pledge that was read at the beginning of our service today. All is perfect simply by existing. And that perfect, imperfect is a construction that we make. Again, in Science of Mind, the only reason we are limited is that we have not allowed the divine within us to completely express. Our divine individuality compels infinity to appear in our experiences as duality, because we have believed in duality. Because we have believed that. So by releasing the need to measure up to something unattainable, to a standard of perfection, we reclaim our power and liberate ourselves from that self-judgment. We just live our lives. We recognize that what we view as imperfection may not actually be imperfection. It's just not the truth. These misbeliefs do not define us. Our value is based on our inherent divine nature. Again, Ernest Holmes says, false ideas heaped upon false ideas make bad matters worse. The whole confusion of the world arises from fundamental errors of thought. Chief among these errors, and the cause to a greater part of the others, is the belief in duality. Remember, oneness, we are one. Richard Rohr writes, we are not all weeds, but we are not all wheat either. We have to learn, even now, to accept and forgive this mixed bag of reality in ourselves and in everyone else. See, if that perfection might paralyze us. It prevents us from taking action and fully experiencing life. And that pursuit of perfection, the pursuit of perfection, creates that state of striving where we feel we're never good enough or ready, or we can't really pursue our dreams. And what if we embrace that imperfection? What if we open ourselves up to a transformative experience of growth? And If, again, from Richard Rohr, if you have forgiven yourself for being imperfect and falling, you can now do that for just about everybody else. And if you've not done it for yourself, I'm afraid you will likely pass on your sadness, absurdity, judgment, and futility to others. This is from Richard Rohr, Falling Upward. And isn't that what empathy is all about? We've forgiven ourselves for being imperfect and falling or failing. You can now do that for everybody else. As we embrace that, we invite greater joy into our lives and free ourselves to explore and experiment without the fear of failure or judgment. And sometimes the judgment is mostly from myself. Nobody else is judging me for falling or not getting up or whatever it happens to be. We become willing to take risks, to try new things if I'm not worried about what it looks like or how I'm appearing to others, if I don't think, oh, I have to be perfect to do this. So we open ourselves up to the possibility. So rather than striving for that unattainable ideal of imperfection, how about if we recognize the inherent beauty and potential in our flaws and open that up to a journey of self-exploration and transformation? I'm not lost, I'm exploring. So self-compassion and acceptance are essential tools for this. Ernest Holmes in the Ernest Holmes paper says, you don't have to despise your personality and say, I hate this body, I'm a worm of the dust, and think you're surrendering to God. When you deny yourself, you deny God. All we have to say is, there is nothing in me but God. Oh, which reminds me, there was a little girl that gone to church with her mother, and the pastor commenced praying with the words, "Oh Lord, without you we are but dust." And as he paused for dramatic effect, you could hear the small voice saying, "Mommy, what is but dust?" In his book, How Can I Help? Ram Dass gives us another perspective. He says, compassion for ourselves, perspective, humor, these are our allies. With their help, we can come to see in the words of the Bhagavad Gita that no step is lost on this path. Even a little progress is freedom from fear. The reward, the real grace of conscious service, then, is the opportunity not only to help relieve suffering, but to grow in wisdom, experience greater unity, and have a good time while we're doing it. Wait, did he say that? Have a good time while we're doing it. That's from the book How Can I Help by Ram Dass. See, we all want to live this authentically joyful life. We see other people doing it and we say, oh, yes, I want that. And then we look at the impact of embracing imperfection. What about that? So, by letting go of the need for external validation, should we say, and meeting the expectations of other people, then we align ourselves with our true essence and live from that authenticity. So, let us embrace those imperfections and know that there's nothing imperfect about them. It is perfectly imperfect. And as we embrace that imperfection as a catalyst for our transformation, we let go of those unrealistic expectations, live that life of authenticity, self-compassion, and joy, and we create a vibrant and expansive experience of life that reflects that. We act as if until it's absolutely true, and knowing that it's always true. So embracing that imperfection fosters resilience. Life is full of ups and downs. I don't know if you noticed that, challenges, setbacks, and we accept the imperfection. It's a natural part of the human experience. And then we're better equipped to navigate the ups and downs. And instead of viewing them as issues, it's like, well, that's an opportunity for growth and learning. And as much as I hate to actually believe it, we understand it's through facing and overcoming challenges that we truly expand and evolve. I would rather just float through life with no challenges, no problems, nothing, but then I wouldn't grow. It's like when you help the butterfly unfold its wings, it doesn't make it. So I have to look at my life, how imperfection and how that perfectionism has hindered my personal growth. Um, where has the pursuit of perfection left me feeling stuck or fearful or unworthy? And then embrace that. You know, you can, again, Dennis Merritt Jones, whose class we took, The Art of Abundance, from his book, The Art of Being, he says this: you can try to wait until everything is perfect in your life before you seek that moment of enlightenment, but you will be waiting an eternity, literally. So I thought perhaps we could join together in a litany of wholeheartedness. And so I have this litany ready to go. What I want to do is I'm going to share my screen, and on it I have a slide. Let me just get that ready. I have a slide about for the line that we want to repeat. So let me move this out of the way and move this out of the way. So we'll be repeating this piece that says, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. So let's join together. And remember, your line is, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Let's see if we can feel this. Because there have been times when shame has crushed our ability to be wholehearted, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Because we've not always had the courage to be imperfect, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Because we have struggled to have compassion for ourselves or others, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Because we've been afraid of our own vulnerability, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Because we are sometimes too scared to live authentically, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Because we are wholehearted people, confident in our worthiness and our belonging, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. Let's just take that thought into our treatment today. We'll just end with a spiritual mind treatment. Oh, just knowing one power, one presence, one infinite source, one divine mind, whole, perfect, complete. And we are one in that. That divine mind, we live and move and have our being in that. That oneness, that wholeness, that perfection. That's true about us. And so knowing one power, one presence, knowing we are one with that, we now speak this word for wholeness. For each person to know their own wholeness, their perfection, knowing that there's only one of us here. We know our wholeness. We know our perfection. And knowing there's only one of us, I know my wholeness. I know my perfection. Just take that in for a moment. I know my wholeness. I know my perfection. And so as we speak this word, as I speak this word for wholeness, for perfection, I know that there is perfection in this world, that it is an abundant universe, and that each person receives exactly what is necessary for them to be that whole, perfect, complete experience. I know this world to be a world of health. There's a perfect pattern for health for each and every body. And so I accept that pattern, and I know it manifests in perfect right ways for each person. Letting go of that which appears to be imperfect and moving into that wholeness. And I know this is also true for creative expression. Each person having that ability to create perfectly imperfect, the design of life, wholeness, a beautiful tapestry, all the threads in place, even those that are out of place are in place. And so, knowing this to be the case, I speak my word finally for love, for perfect relationships, for joy in experiencing the being of life. And knowing this is true, knowing this is spirit in action, I release, I let go. I'm so grateful that this is true. I'm grateful for these truths. I'm grateful for this perfection. I'm grateful for this imperfection, perfectly imperfect, and in this expanding universe. I let it be. I simply relax. I let go. I let it be, knowing that that divine law is at work always and says yes, and yes, and yes again. And I invite you to join me as together we affirm, and so it is. Because we are wholehearted people, confident in our worthiness and our belonging, we let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are.